How do I correct a passive activity loss? PAL, Carryover on Schedule E. If you are wondering how to correct a passive activity loss carryover on Schedule E, you are not alone. Many taxpayers face this situation. Let's break down the steps you need to take to get it right. First, it is important to understand what passive activity losses are. These losses occur when your expenses from passive activities, like rental properties or limited partnerships, exceed the income you earn from those activities. The Internal Revenue Service limits how much of these losses you can deduct in any given year. If you cannot deduct all of your losses, the remaining amount is carried forward to future years. Next, you need to identify where your passive activity loss carryover comes from. Typically, these carryovers arise from previous years when losses were not allowed due to limitations set by the Internal Revenue Service or TRISC rules. To keep track of these amounts, you will use Form 8582, which calculates how much of your losses can be deducted for the year and what amounts need to be carried forward. When you report your passive activity loss carryovers on Schedule E, it is important to note that you do not list the carryover amount as a separate line item. Instead, the carryover affects the total loss amount you report for each activity. This calculation is done through Form 8582. If you find that your carryover was not reported correctly, you will need to amend your tax return. To do this, you will use Form 1040X to correct Schedule E and Form 8582. On your amended Schedule E, make sure to enter the correct income or loss figures for each passive activity. It is essential to reflect the proper application of passive activity loss rules. Completing Form 8582, again, will help you recalculate the allowable losses and the suspended carryover amounts. Be sure to attach any necessary statements that explain the corrections you are making. There are special situations to consider as well. For instance, if you converted a rental property to personal use, you may have suspended depreciation losses that were not deducted. These losses will remain as suspended until you sell the property. In the year you sell, you will need to reintroduce these carryovers on Schedule E and Form 8582 to offset any gains or income from the sale. If your income exceeds certain thresholds, the special allowance for rental real estate losses may be reduced or eliminated. This can increase your suspended passive activity loss carryovers, which will carry forward until you have enough passive income or dispose of the property. To make the process easier, keep detailed records of all your passive activity loss carryovers each year. This includes noting the amounts that were disallowed and the reasons for their suspension. Using tax software or consulting a tax professional can also help ensure that Form 8582 is completed correctly and linked to Schedule E. When you amend your returns, double-check that all related forms are consistent and that your carryovers are accurately reflected. Correcting a passive activity loss carryover on Schedule E requires careful attention to detail, but following these steps will help you navigate the process successfully.